Yeah, welcome in. Welcome back to another episode of the Format Podcast. Got a pretty interesting show for you here today. If you saw the thumbnail, obviously you did, you wouldn't have clicked on it. Gilbert Arenas, No Chill Gil, host of Gil's Arena Podcast. He's at it again, and he's so interesting to me because sometimes he says things that make a lot of sense. A lot of times he says things that make no sense, but again, he knows his audience, and we're going to get to all of that. But before we do, if you're here on YouTube and you haven't already, you know what time it is. Please go ahead, click that subscribe, that like, and that notification bell so you can be kept aware of any time we drop new content on the channel. If you want the audio-only version of the podcast, please go ahead, open up your audio podcast platform, hit the search bar, type in the Format Podcast. We should come right up. If you're enjoying the content, please give us that 5-star review. Give us that thumbs up, which symbolizes a like. And make sure you share the podcast. Also, leave us a comment, whether it's here on YouTube or the audio podcast platform. All that stuff helps us rise in the algorithm, helps us find more sports fans, helps more sports fans find us. Now let's get right to it. Woo! All right. No waiting. This one really got to me. Gilbert Arenas. Okay, first, before I get to that, when we get into this LeBron versus Michael Jordan thing, and this show is not particularly that, but it's more Michael Jordan focused, right? Jordan centric. So when we get into that, a lot of times you hear me responding to other people talking about this, right? Whether it's Rich Paul or Shannon Sharp or Nick Wright or whoever. And one thing that I always say, if you've heard me talk about this topic before, is that these guys, when they're saying certain things, they know who they're speaking to, because sometimes they flat out lie. Other times they say things that are just incomplete. But when they talk to certain people who don't have the frame of reference, they can go ahead and get away with saying these things, right? Even though, of course, you know, the internet, you can look stuff up. But anyway, we'll get right back to that. So anyway, on a recent episode of Gil's Arena, Kenyon Martin, former #1 overall draft pick in the NBA, he was on with Gilbert Arenas, of course, and they were talking the LeBron and MJ debate, which apparently will never, ever go away, even though there's some pretty simple ways to go ahead and put that to bed. But regardless, they were talking that. And one of the things I thought was so interesting, Kenyon Martin says that he feels like it's sad because in this Michael Jordan, LeBron James debate, he feels like people are always attempting to discredit LeBron and what he has done for the sake of arguing for MJ, right? And, you know, I actually had to pause the video and think about that for a second because I'm like, wait, what? But in my estimation, what he doesn't realize is that he actually had that backwards. And what do I mean by that? All of LeBron's fans, whether they're in the media, like I mentioned, your Shannon Sharps, your Nick Wrights, your Colin Cowherds, your not Jason Whitlock, your Jason McIntyres, all these guys, right? Of course, his agent, Rich Paul. I mean, his agent literally gets paid to push the propaganda. So that's a different story. But anyway, and all LeBron's regular fans, every argument these guys make, their first move is to say, well, MJ didn't do this, MJ didn't do that, MJ didn't have to deal with this, MJ didn't have to deal with that, etc. Right? So to me, what Kmart is not hearing, and I've talked about this before, is that LeBron James's work doesn't stand on its own, which is why people always have to attack MJ. They have to attack the era that Mike played in. They always talk about the plumbers, this, that, and the third, which is nonsense. I've discredited that and debunked that multiple times on this channel. And you can go back and check some of the other videos for that. But anyway, I find it interesting that Kmart had it backwards. But what I'm going to do is respond to some of Gilbert Arenas' points that he made in this video, okay? And my biggest takeaway from all this is he's being disingenuous again. But before I break down how that's happening, let's go ahead, take a minute, listen to some of the things he had to say. Now, I'm going to warn you ahead of time. This is about a 3.5-minute clip. This is longer than the clips I normally use, but just take a listen to it because there's some things that I'm going to have to respond to in this video. And I wanted to make sure that I got his comments kind of in their entirety on this particular topic so that I could make sure that I was getting all the context for what he was trying to say before I go ahead and dismantle it. All right. So let's go ahead, check that out, and then I'll come back and we'll talk about it.
You know, you want to protect legacies, right? But you're not telling the whole story of the legacy of anyone, right? You know, when we talk about Michael Jordan, them years when he first came into the league, right? He got to be selfish. Before his first championship, he scored damn near 19,000 points before he got his first ring, right? There was no way the league was allowing Kobe to be selfish like that. They was not allowing LeBron to be selfish like that. So when you talk about championships, cool. But what ends up happening is you try to trump it and use Jordan's selfish years. Oh, he had 9 scoring titles. He got this MVP, all-star MVP. This you throw in all this extra stuff that you're not allowing anymore, right? Jordan got to be an individual because the league needed it at the time, right? They needed a face to say, this is who we are. So no one critiqued him losing. Just go out there and score 35, 37, 30. Do that. We need it. MVP. We'll give you MVP. We'll give you all these things, right? Which was needed then. But you can't use that against them and say, well, he ain't got 9 scoring titles. Well, he ain't got these MVPs. Well, he ain't got this and that. Like when you throw Michael Jordan in a player's face, what you're throwing is 6 rings. Right, 6 rings. This is to measure up to Michael Jordan, you need 6 rings. So when a young player comes into the NBA, like somebody like LeBron, and this is who you're measuring him up to, and a Kobe who you're measuring up to, 6 rings is in their mind. So they're not trying to be what James Harden got to do, right? They're sitting there like, all right, I need to try to find a way to win a championship now. LeBron James leaves to try to go win rings because
that's what
he, like, you guys are laughing because I ain't got no ring, not realizing Michael Jordan didn't win a ring till 27, right? Like Luka right now, if we follow Michael Jordan's, Luka gets 4 more years of doing whatever the fuck he wanna do, right? Before we even say, all right, time to win, right? But they're not gonna allow that shit. They're already saying, these are some pointless stats. Right? He ain't got no wins. He ain't got no money. He's pointless that. Right? You sit there and do that shit to everyone. Right? Like use his whole stat so we can sit there and like, all right, okay, he got 3 scoring titles his first year. All right, yeah, I don't want him. Let me be Kobe Bryant and James Harden my first 4 years, and give me some scoring titles, give me some, probably an MVP, and then later on when I'm 27 years old, I can try to win and do that. But that's the only thing I don't like. That when you're making an argument, it's you're not using that one player allowed him to be selfish. When Kobe tried to be selfish and say, all right, well, I got the championships, I need some scoring titles. I ain't got no scoring titles. And as soon as he started getting the scoring titles, it's like, yeah, nah, we're not giving you no MVP. You got to win.
Okay, so some interesting stuff here Gilbert said. And before the video started, I mentioned it. My problem is he's being disingenuous. He knows who his audience is. He's talking to his audience. So let's get started, all right? The first thing he talks about is Michael Jordan was allowed, let's listen to the verbiage, to be selfish by the NBA early in his career because they needed that. They needed Michael Jordan to be that guy, to be the face of the league and say, this is what we're about. So let's start there. So Michael Jordan, as we know, was drafted in 1984. And Gilbert Arenas is already off to a bad start in this because the NBA was already in an incredible place at that time. Now we know in the 70s, the league was unfortunately thought to be too black. The league was full of drugs and alcohol and all that stuff. So it was not in a great place, even though there was also some all-time great players in the league at that time. But 1979, obviously you have the greatest, most watched college basketball game in history. Indiana State Sycamores versus Michigan State Spartans, i.e. Magic Johnson versus Larry Bird for the national championship. Magic wins, and that right there sets off the rivalry that would go on for the next 14 years in the NBA. And so now Magic walks into the league. He immediately wins the championship as a rookie. Obviously, his team is loaded, Jamal Silk Wilts, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and more, right? So he wins the championship out of the gate. Larry Bird wins Rookie of the Year, and it starts that rivalry that literally saves the NBA. So by the time Michael Jordan came into the league in 1984, Magic and Bird had already been in the league for 5 years. And by the time the NBA draft happened in 1984, the Boston Celtics and Larry Bird had just come off of beating Magic Johnson and the Los Angeles Lakers in a thrilling 7-game series in the NBA Finals. Okay. Ratings were fantastic. The league was doing great. Like I mentioned, these two guys had literally saved it and lifted it up on their shoulders. So to say that the league needed Michael Jordan to be selfish, already starting out with a lie, Gilbert. Wrong answer. But let's give Gil the benefit of the doubt. Let's just say that that's true. This is what I talk about. People pushing narratives because they know who they're talking to. But the good thing is there's literally a world of information out there if we just look, right? If you're watching this on your cell phone, you can search it, whether you got Safari or Google or whatever it is, you can search for the information. It's all there. Same way I found it, you can find it. Anyway, so to say that, back to Gilbert Arenas saying that the league allowed Michael Jordan to be selfish. We've already done away with the silly notion that the league needed it because Magic and Bird were in their primes in the league. They were the two best players in the league, and the NBA by that time was doing well. Okay, so now let's look at this. Michael Jordan's first 7 seasons. It took him 7 seasons to win a championship. He came in the league in 1984, and he won his first title in 1991. So apparently, according to Gilbert Arenas, these were his selfish years. In my estimation, and I don't know Michael Jordan, of course, but in my estimation, he wasn't being selfish. He was doing what he had to do, or what he thought he had to do, to help a bad team win. And we know the Bulls were not good. That's why they picked 3rd overall, right? Okay. Over those first 7 seasons, Michael Jordan averaged, what do we got here? I'm sorry. Michael Jordan averaged 32 points per game and took 11,826 field goal attempts. Whoa. Damn, that's a lot of shots. I didn't even realize it was that many. Maybe you got me here, Gilbert. Michael Jordan took 11,826 field goal attempts and averaged 32 points a game over his first 7 seasons. During those first 7 seasons, I think he had already won 2 MVPs already. He won a Defensive Player of the Year, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, he had won a number of scoring titles, but we could put that to the side. Let's just say, you know, he was being selfish. I got you, Arenas. You're right. Cool. So now let's look at the same stretch of time entering the league for LeBron James. In his first 7 seasons, he averaged 27.8 points per game, and he attempted 11,403 field goals. Wait. Hold on. So you mean to tell me LeBron James, the pass first, unselfish guy, took nearly the same amount of field goals in his first 7 years as Michael Jordan, the selfish guy that the league needed and allowed to be selfish? That doesn't add up, Gilbert. That doesn't add up. And the guy who they rave about his efficiency, for those 7 years, LeBron James, who's 6'9", and at that point about 240 pounds, so much bigger, much more attacking the basket, less all-time great shot blockers, less all-time great power forwards, less big bodies in the paint, and Michael Jordan was way more efficient, shooting 52% from the field in his first 7 years, while LeBron shot 47.5%. None of that adds up with what you talk about, Gilbert. But I digress. So, quick side note, by the way. In the same amount of time, LeBron, that guy who they'll tell you is a better defender and can defend all 5 positions. That's what they like to tell you, right? Well, maybe he can defend all 5 positions in today's NBA, where 6'9" is, you know, there's not too many legitimate big, 7-foot true centers and 6'10", 6'11" true power forwards anymore. But they tell you he's the better defender than Michael Jordan. Cool. How is it that in those first 7 years, which would have been LeBron's like athletic peak prime, how did he have less blocks and steals than Michael Jordan? Now, maybe we'll give Mike the benefit on the steals, right? Because he's a smaller guy. He's quicker than LeBron, although the LeBron fans will tell you he's the greatest athlete the game has ever seen, and he's quicker and faster than Michael Jordan. But anyway, let's just say we give Michael Jordan the benefit of the doubt for the steals. How does he have more blocks in his first 7 seasons than LeBron James, who is supposed to be the better athlete, the higher jumper? He's also 3 inches taller. How does that work out? By the way, LeBron also has less offensive rebounds during that time. So Michael Jordan is doing that in an era, like I just mentioned, with true power forwards and dominant center play. Interesting. And by the way, if you're wondering what I mean by dominant center play, I mean, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I mean, Robert Parrish, both Hall of Famers. I mean, Tree Rollins, top 10 shot blocker. I mean, Hakeem Olajuwon. I mean, Patrick Ewing. I mean, David Robinson, right? All of these guys, what? Who are they? Top 10 shot blockers and Hall of Fame big men. Oh, my bad. 92, Shaquille O'Neal came in. Alonzo Mourning came in. Also, Hall of Fame big men, top 10 shot blockers. But, I'm not going to digress. All of that, I would say, makes it a lot more difficult to be crashing the glass, especially as a smaller shooting guard and not a guy who's power forward size, right? Makes it harder to crash the glass, and it makes it harder to score in the paint. But I digress. Anyway, all this stuff is just something to think about. Back to Gilbert Arenas. Next, he says that the league needed a face to say, this is who we are. And again, this is why they allowed Michael Jordan to be more selfish. Like I said earlier, they already had that face. Matter of fact, they had two of those faces, and here they are. The hick from French Lick and the master of Showtime, Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. The two guys who, again, saved the NBA and brought it back. Okay, cool. Now, he then moves on to talking about Michael Jordan and the 6 rings. And so now everybody is coming in the league gunning for the 6 rings. And so they're less worried about being an all-time great scorer and doing what James Harden did, and blah, 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 because all they're thinking about is 6 rings. Jordan had 6 rings. Kobe had 5 rings. I got to be shooting for that. Interesting. Now, aren't rings exactly what you play for, or do you play to come in and put up stats? I don't get it. But the difference here is, it's not just that Michael Jordan got the 6 rings. See, this is where we lose sight of things, right? You got guys like Skip Bayless who says, all I know is Michael Jordan, 6 rings, 6 championships, 6 finals MVPs. And all that is great. And that is dominant. I get it. But that's a lazy argument, Skip, even though I agree with you that Michael Jordan is clearly the greatest player of all time and LeBron James can't touch him. But it's not just that Michael Jordan got the 6 rings. It's that he never lost in the finals once he started getting there. It's that not just that he didn't lose, he never even saw a game 7 in the NBA Finals. Never let it get that far. He kept a bunch of all-time greats from getting one while he was in the league, right? As much as I love Olajuwon is my favorite player of all time. He didn't get a chip while Michael Jordan was, at his prime, at his peak in the league, right? He got those 2 while Michael Jordan was out. Now we can argue whether or not we believe that the Rockets would have been able to beat the Bulls at some point had Michael Jordan never retired. Who knows, right? Michael Jordan's on wax saying he's glad that he never had to go against the big African because we had no answer for him. Cool. But we don't know that the Rockets, it's the empirical evidence is there that Michael Jordan could not lose in the finals because it simply never happened, right? But that's a different story. Anyway, Olajuwon never got a championship while Michael Jordan was, playing basketball in the NBA. Karl Malone and John Stockton, 2 of the all-time greats at their position, never got one, right? There's a lot of guys. We could go down the list. I'm not going to do that today, but there's a lot of guys, Charles Barkley, that Michael Jordan kept from eating. Reggie Miller didn't get to eat because of Michael Jordan, right? Guys did everything they could, put it all out there, but Michael Jordan just would close the door on dudes. Anyway, that level of absolute dominance after going through the fire to get to that point is the difference between Michael Jordan and LeBron. So then Gilbert talks about, people were laughing at LeBron because he left to win a title in Miami. No, people aren't laughing at LeBron because he went to Miami. People are laughing at LeBron. And Gilbert, you should know this. You should know better. You've been in the league. You're a competitor. You are an outstanding player. The reason people were laughing at LeBron is because he orchestrated a team up that completely shifted the balance of competition in the conference for years in order to get those rings and then, continue to push this false narrative that he's as good as or better than Jordan. That's the problem. It's about LeBron James greasing the skids to make the path easier instead of climbing the mountain like everybody else had to, right? Bird and his Celtics had to get through the Sixers to win his championships. Isaiah and his Pistons had to get through the Celtics to win his championships. And then, of course, the Lakers from the other side of the bracket and the Pistons. Not the Pistons, I'm sorry, the Trailblazers, right? But we're just talking about in the East, okay? And, of course, Michael Jordan is well documented and well chronicled that he had to work and get his team past the Pistons to get to the NBA Finals and start winning his championships. The difference is, in the East, once Michael Jordan and the Bulls started winning, they closed the door on everyone else. Okay? That's the difference. Why is Gilbert Arenas acting like he doesn't know this? This is what I don't get. Okay, another question here. Why does Gilbert bring up the fact that Michael Jordan didn't win a ring until age 27? I'm not sure at all what the relevance to that is. Isn't it relevant that he spent 3 years in college and LeBron didn't go to college? There's that, right? So is it an apples to apples comparison? I don't think so. All right. Then, just like I mentioned, even after the 3 years in college, he had to grind his way through a brutal Eastern Conference, build his team, build himself, put in the work, climb the mountain to get there. And I'm sure that's why winning that championship was even more sweet than LeBron's championship when he finally won in Miami. And I bet if you could ask LeBron in his own quiet time, he would probably say the same thing. I guess Gilbert Arenas really believes that Michael Jordan wasn't trying to win early in his career and that he just wanted to pile up stats, because you heard him talk about the stats and the scoring and this and that. And here's the thing. Obviously, I don't know Michael Jordan personally, but from everything we've heard about his personality, he's arguably the most psychomaniacal competitor the league has ever seen. And I'm pretty sure he was doing everything he could to win. Everything that he thought he had to do to win, Michael Jordan was doing it, right? He had a season where he averaged 32 points, 8 rebounds, and 8 assists. LeBron James has never done that, and he's supposed to be the better all-around player. Michael Jordan has been Defensive Player of the Year. He's led the league in steals 3 times. LeBron James has never done either of those things. He's supposed to be the better defensive player. Like, I don't get it. We keep pushing this narrative, especially guys like Gilbert Arenas, who should know better. But again, they know who they're talking to when they say this stuff, right? And it just doesn't add up. Michael Jordan was doing everything he could possibly do to try and carry his team to the win. He just didn't have enough help. Sound familiar, LeBron fans? That's all I got on this one. And by the way, if you want to go back and look, I got a show on here called Jordan or MJ Never Beat Bird, which really kind of chronicles the rise of the Bulls to championship contention and kind of talks about more in detail all the stuff that went on in Eastern Conference for Michael Jordan to get to the point where he was winning championships. So definitely want to check that out. But listen, thanks so much for staying with me. I heard Gilbert talking all this, and I had to get on here and talk about it and refute a lot of the stuff he was saying. I appreciate your time, and I'll be back with you next episode. Please leave your comments in the comments section. Tell me, is Michael Jordan the greatest of all time? Tell me, is LeBron James better than him? Tell me, is Gilbert Arenas crazy for some of the stuff that he's saying? And hey, if I said things that were wrong, I have no problem being corrected. So do that as well. So I'll be back with you on the next episode. I can't wait, and I'm out. Peace.